You guys asked for it. You guys wanted Napoleon on Epic History. I got you Napoleon on Epic History. Glad that you're with me. Hit that subscribe button and let's jump in.
History March, an Epic History TV History March collaboration, supported by our sponsor, Osprey Publishing.
Let's go. I love Napoleon quotes. By the way, we're gonna pause. Yeah, Napoleon's very, very interesting to me. I've seen a lot of like filming movies and documentaries. His ambition. I know there's a part of him which people do not believe is a good side, and I think all leaders have faults. And then depending on how you look at things, Napoleon really did help France. He really did love his country. So let's just jump into it. Where it started, Toulon. And it's true.
In the summer of 1793, the French Revolution was entering its fourth year, and France was on the verge of anarchy. In Paris, political extremists had seized control of the revolution.
Robespierre.
They guillotined the king and imposed a reign of terror that
That's what it was
dealt
called.
summary justice to all suspected enemies of the revolution.
You thought the Red Scare was bad. Ugh. The Robespierre scare.
Hoping to unify the new republic, France's leaders had declared war on the Habsburg Empire. But the conflict quickly widened, and soon France was facing the combined might of Europe's leading powers, determined to stamp out her dangerous political experiment. Meanwhile, whole regions of France had come out in open revolt, horrified.
And I really want to like set a preface here for people. If you guys are watching this and learning with me, these were a lot of monarchies. You said Habsburg Empire. A lot of these places that you guys see on this map were monarchies, and France basically did what just happened to Great Britain, where the United States obviously had a revolution, and they may have kind of looked at that and said, maybe we need a revolution. Maybe we're not getting representations as their feudal system, and as all feudal systems have always worked. So monarchies don't like things ruffling over there in revolution land. They think they're going to be next if they don't squander this. They believe that this is a threat to Europe, and that's why the coalition forms.
By the new extremism of the revolution. In August, the Republic suffered a further, potentially fatal blow when the city of Toulon joined the revolt. Toulon was France's largest and most important naval base in the south, home to a third of the entire French Navy. But now...
And these are going to be before like anything ironclad or anything like that. But still, these ships, naval superiority was everything.
Rebels welcomed their old enemy, the British Royal Navy, into the port, led by Admiral Lord Hood.
Said RAF.
Aboard HMS Victory. It was an extraordinary coup. Without a shot being fired, the Allies had crippled French naval power in the Mediterranean and gained a vital toehold on the French coast. All French forces in the area were immediately diverted to face this new threat and lay siege to the rebel port. 19,000 troops in all. But since most French officers had been aristocrats who were now fleeing the revolution in large numbers, they were seriously short of professional leadership.
It was all based off merit at that point.
Their commander, General Jean-François Carteau, was a loyal Republican, but a court painter by trade with no military training. To make matters worse, one of his few professional officers, his artillery commander, Colonel Martin, had been badly wounded on the approach to Toulon. Antoine Salicetti, a Corsican deputy of the National Convention in Paris, recommended as his replacement a fellow countryman.
Corsican, because now Corsica, obviously where Napoleon's at, and he's got a referral right here. It's just opportunity. Just think about the opportunity. Like, something had to happen, then that's had to happen, then you had to know a guy, and then this is your moment, just like Eminem sings. Dominated.
A 24-year-old artillery officer who was passing Toulon en route to the front, named Napoleon Bonaparte, or Bonaparte. Bonaparte was a professional soldier, but he'd seen almost no active service. Nevertheless, Salicetti was impressed by his manner, and most of all, his politics. Bonaparte had just written a political pamphlet, a short story about a young artillery officer who berates his fellow diners for their disloyalty to the Republic. General Carteau thought it wise to accept Deputy Salicetti's recommendation.
Another quote. One can remain 24, or if necessary 36 hours without eating, but one cannot remain 3 minutes without gunpowder. Wow. He's talking about a siege, by the way. I think. Siege or rations. I don't know. He's very aggressive. Toulon.
The great port of Toulon was well defended by city walls and a dozen outlying forts and redoubts. They were held by 2,000 British soldiers and sailors, 6,000 Spanish troops, 6,000 Neapolitans, and 800 Sardinians. Artillery would be the key to overcoming these formidable defences. But when Bonaparte was put in command of the artillery on the 16th of September, he found himself with few cannon, not enough trained gun crews, and a shortage of gunpowder and shot.
All that as adversity as well. That's crazy.
With relentless energy and determination, Bonaparte transformed the situation, requisitioning unused guns, training infantrymen to work them, setting up a new forge and workshop, and arranging transport from Marseille of 100,000 sandbags for constructing new batteries.
Wow.
Through hard work, he was ultimately able to build his force up to 64 officers and 1,500 men, manning 100 cannon, howitzers, and mortars.
And think about that. You're just not a military guy. You're a recruiter at that point. You're a people person. You're being super pragmatic about things. You're understanding how math, it's just, you have to be so smart, super smart to be a military general at this pedigree. You just have to be super smart. A lot of people think of the military and commanders of like brutes, not smart people. Not the case. Not the case. Oops, I muted it. Somehow.
And mortars. Within days, Bonaparte had established 2 new forward batteries with good revolutionary names, La Montagne and Sans Culottes, which brought Toulon's inner harbour within range and forced Admiral Hood to move all his ships closer to the port. Bonaparte also came up with a plan, one that would allow the French to bypass most of Toulon's defences and secure the rapid victory the Republic so desperately needed. Bonaparte argued that if Fort L'Aiguillette could be captured, which looked out across the harbour, he could fill it with heavy guns and shell the British and Spanish fleet at anchor. Admiral Hood would be forced to abandon the port and take...
What a plan. Like, what a plan. Like, to know the proximity, to know this is chess.
Take with him the Allied soldiers that Toulon relied on for its defence. General Carteau saw the merits of Bonaparte's plan and on the 22nd of September, French forces attacked Montcaire. But to Bonaparte's exasperation, while he'd argued for an attack by 3,000 men, the indecisive Carteau committed only 400. Not only was the attack easily repulsed, but it alerted the Allies to the danger. Within 48 hours, they'd reinforced Montcaire with thousands more troops and built a new fort named Fort Mulgrave, bristling with 20 cannon. The position was now so strong, the French nicknamed it Little Gibraltar.
There is only one possible plan.
Finally, in mid-November, an experienced professional soldier arrived to take command of French forces, General Dugommier. He saw at once that Bonaparte's plan was the only way to take Toulon, and gave it his full backing.
Wow, what a blessing.
Bonaparte, promoted to major, got to work, overseeing construction of several more batteries in preparation for the decisive assault. One forward battery was so exposed to enemy fire that men refused to be sent there. So Bonaparte renamed it La Batterie des Hommes Sans Peur, the battery of men without fear. And suddenly, there was no shortage of volunteers.
Courageous.
It was an early display of Napoleon's genius for inspiring his soldiers.
That kind of looks like is that him with the white? Yeah, it is him because of the white horse. That kind of looks like Joaquin Phoenix almost, the actor that plays in Napoleon that came out last year or the year before.
One that would serve him well in the years ahead. On the 30th of November, the Allied Land Forces commander, British General Charles O'Hara, tried to seize back the initiative, leading an assault on the new French batteries facing Fort Malbousquet.
Napoleon's coming.
At first, the attack was successful. The batteries were overrun, and the French guns spiked. But a counterattack with much greater numbers, and led in person by General Dugommier and Major Bonaparte, drove back the Allies.
Wow, courageous again.
General O'Hara himself was shot through the hand and captured. 12 years before, he'd surrendered to George Washington at Yorktown during the American War of Independence.
That's crazy. Imagine that life where you've been overseas and now you're fighting on your own homeland and get injured.
Now he got to surrender to Napoleon Bonaparte.
Oh! I said that wrong. That's crazy though. You got surrendered. He probably one of the two greatest generals of all time, General George Washington. And then a lot of people don't think he's a good general. I think he's a good general. And then Napoleon, who isn't a general. He's a major. Among those who most distinguished themselves and who gave me the most help in rallying men and leading them forward were Citizen Bonaparte, commandant of the artillery. Another blessing, publicly.
In the early hours of the 18th of December, in howling wind and driving rain, the French launched a major assault on Fort Mulgrave. The wet conditions made muskets useless except as clubs or with bayonets. Bonaparte led the second wave in person.
This is a stupid question, but why does that make muskets useless? Is it because the gunpowder gets wet? I don't know.
Amid fierce hand-to-hand fighting, his horse was killed under him, and he was bayoneted in the thigh by a British sergeant, a wound that came within inches of ending his life and radically changing the course of history.
Yeah, wow. Can you imagine?
Finally, the Allied garrison was overwhelmed, Mulgrave fell to the French. Fort L'Aiguillette and Tour de la Balaquière were soon also in French hands.
Here comes the guns!
By the following afternoon, the French had 10 heavy guns in L'Aiguillette, placing the Allied ships within range. Admiral Hood could not expose his valuable ships of the line to such a threat. He had no option but to order an immediate evacuation of the fleet and garrison from Toulon.
Isn't that insane? Chess!
Small Spanish and British teams raced to destroy all the French ships and naval stores that they couldn't take with them.
Wow.
But amid the chaos of their departure, 18 ships of the line were allowed to fall back into French hands. A badly missed opportunity. Many French citizens of Toulon were desperate to escape aboard the Allied ships, knowing that the Republicans would inflict terrible reprisals on the city. British and Spanish ships took as many as they could, about 14,000 in all, but scores were drowned amid chaotic and desperate scenes.
Yeah, I bet it was horrendous.
Others were left to face the wrath of the revolution. Republican troops entered the city the next morning, and executions and firing squads began almost immediately.
That's the horrors, man. That's the horrors of all this.
The next 2 weeks, about 200 were executed every day.
That's horrible.
Allied propaganda later blamed Bonaparte for the atrocities, but there's no evidence he was directly involved.
My predictions were exactly fulfilled. Such is the history of this event. It so greatly astonished you. Has never been launched.
France's young republic was now fighting back on all fronts. And with the fall of Toulon, the Allies had lost a golden opportunity, a chance to stir up further revolt, deal a lasting blow to French naval power, perhaps even overturn the revolution. But instead, the French Republic had weathered one of its greatest storms, in no small part thanks to the remarkable judgment, energy and courage of one 24-year-old artillery officer.
24! That's insane. That's like on the level of the people that he followed or looked up to, like Alexander the Great, of course. But let's talk about this. This video is basically over. Can you imagine, like, the turn of events? There's so much going on there. And the butterfly effect here. Like, we could have, like, Napoleon literally could have died because his horse, he had to fall off his horse. His horse died. He got stabbed in the leg with a bayonet. Could have hit his femoral artery. He would have bled out there. It would have been over. He could have also caught an infection and died just as well. Like, there's so many variables here. And then that plan was accepted because of Napoleon had to be there because of the absence, and then he had a referral from a fellow Corsican that put him in this area, and that plan kind of went to the general, and the general chose his plan and is rallying to the Minister of War. But then this guy was able to defeat on a rainy day, rainy night, and you're going up to the fort, and the fort is garrisoned by British troops, and through bayonets, through overpowering, they were able to take it, and then they were able to use geometry and set up artillery to be able to take out this fleet, and that scared them off. I absolutely think if Toulon stayed prominent and they did not have this issue with dealing with Bonaparte, and they were able to kind of domino effect it, yeah, it could have been interesting how France looked. France probably wouldn't have the same borders. Napoleon wouldn't have rose to be what he is today in terms of what he did. So many things could have happened. This little thing, this little Toulon moment started it all. That's why it says Napoleon's first victory, and that's why he credits himself. This is where things began. It cannot be more apparent. Thank you guys so much for watching. We got plenty of more Napoleon to watch. This is just the first one. Like he's gonna go through Italy, Egypt, and then there's so much more. We already know. But I appreciate you guys. Leave a video recommendation down below. Subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.